What if I told you that one of the greatest mysteries of the Bible has puzzled scholars for centuries? What did Jesus write in the sand? Why did he choose silence when everyone expected an answer? What did those hidden words reveal about God's justice and mercy? Get ready for an incredible journey through the story of the adulterous woman and uncover the true meaning behind this mysterious moment. What was Jesus Christ teaching us with this gesture? And how does it change our lives today? The scene is intense. The Pharisees arrive in an uproar, shoving a woman into the middle of the crowd. Accused of adultery, she is publicly humiliated. But something strange is happening. Where is the man involved in this sin? He is nowhere to be seen. Only the woman stands before them. And that alone reveals something crucial. This was never about justice. This was a carefully crafted trap for Jesus of Nazareth. Were they truly seeking to uphold the law, or were they just trying to corner him? The religious leaders were obsessed with finding fault in Jesus' words. He had already become a threat to them. People followed him, his teachings stirred hearts, and, perhaps most infuriating to the Pharisees, Jesus openly challenged their hypocritical traditions. So what could they do? They devised the perfect trap. The law stated that the woman should be stoned, but Roman law forbade executions without official approval. No matter what Jesus said, he would be caught in a contradiction. Now, imagine what was going through that woman's mind. She knew exactly what happened to those who were condemned. Heavy stones, the shouting, the unbearable pain, and death, certain and inescapable. But what about Jesus? What would he do? The people held their breath, waiting, expecting, anxious to hear his response. But, to everyone's shock, Jesus said nothing. Instead, he bent down and began writing in the sand. Think about it. Everyone anticipated a speech, a defense, maybe even a harsh judgment. But nothing. Jesus writing in the sand? How could that possibly change anything? What message was he leaving behind? What did Jesus write on the ground that made the accusers completely change their attitude? The Pharisees were not truly concerned with the law of Moses, much less with justice. Their real goal was to trap Jesus in an impossible dilemma. If he let the woman go, they could accuse him of rejecting the law. If he ordered her execution, he would be defying Roman authority, which prohibited unauthorized executions. It was a perfect no-win situation, or so they thought. But here's the irony. These men wanted to use the very law of Moses as a weapon, yet they ignored a crucial part of it. The law demanded that both the man and the woman be punished for adultery. So where was the man? Why was only the woman being publicly shamed? That alone proved that this wasn't about justice. It was about trapping Jesus of Nazareth. The tension in the air was suffocating. All eyes were on Jesus. Would he go against his own teachings? Would he yield to the pressure of the crowd? Or would he remain silent? The Pharisees were convinced that they had finally cornered the master. But what happened next was something no one expected. Instead of arguing or falling into their trap, Jesus simply bent down and wrote in the sand again. But why? Why did Jesus write with his finger in the sand? What was the meaning behind this mysterious act? The answer to that question would change the course of history forever. Jesus' silence was deafening. While everyone expected words that would seal the argument, he simply bent down and began writing in the sand. Picture the scene. The dust rising slightly, the accusers shifting uneasily, the onlookers holding their breath. But what did Jesus write on the ground? Why didn't he respond directly? Such a simple gesture carried an enormous weight. For centuries, scholars have tried to unravel this mystery. Some believe that Jesus writing in the sand was him listing the sins of the accusers. Others suggest that he was writing a passage from the law itself, something that would expose their hypocrisy. Some say he was simply giving them time to reflect. Whatever the case, one thing is certain. This moment was not in vain. Now think about it. If Jesus really did write their sins in the dirt, that would explain why they walked away one by one. Imagine looking down and seeing, written in front of everyone, the evidence of your own guilt. How would those who were ready to stone the woman react? Jesus of Nazareth knew exactly how to disarm his accusers, and he did so without raising his voice, without arguing, just by writing. But the real turning point was yet to come. After writing on the ground, Jesus stood up and looked at the men holding the stones. It was at that moment that he spoke one of the most powerful sentences of all time. One line that changed the entire course of that woman's life and left her accusers speechless. Jesus stood up, looked around, and with the calm of someone who knew exactly what he was doing, said, "Let him who is without sin cast the first stone." And just like that, he dismantled their entire trap. The silence that followed was overwhelming. The accusers had no response. Could anyone there really claim they had never made a mistake? Who among them had the courage to throw the first stone? The scene was unsettling. The impact of Jesus Christ's words was undeniable. They had come to condemn the adulterous woman, but Jesus made them look at themselves. Suddenly, the focus was no longer on the woman and her sin, but on the hypocrisy of the accusers. And one by one, they began to drop their stones and walk away. Interestingly, the older ones left first, perhaps because they had lived longer, sinned more, or simply had greater awareness of their own failures. Imagine being there at that moment. The woman still huddled on the ground, hearing the footsteps fade away. Fear was still present, but now it was mixed with confusion. What was happening? Was she really going to escape death? Jesus wasn't just saving her physical life. He was giving her a new chance to truly live. And then the last accuser was gone. Now, it was just Jesus and the woman. The crowd had likely walked away, still reflecting on what had happened, wondering what would come next. Would Jesus condemn her? Would he ignore what she had done? What would he say now? His response was as powerful as his silence. Now, the woman stood alone before Jesus. No accuser remained. No stone had been thrown. Only the Master and that broken soul waiting for her sentence. But instead of condemnation, Jesus of Nazareth looked at her with compassion and asked, "Woman, where are your accusers? Has no one condemned you?" The question was simple, yet deeply significant. After all, who could condemn her now? With a trembling voice, she answered, "No one, Lord." And then came one of the most liberating statements Jesus ever spoke. "Neither do I condemn you. Go and sin no more." Notice that Jesus did not ignore her wrongdoing. He acknowledged the sin, but instead of punishment, he offered something far greater, a new beginning. He saved her from both physical and spiritual death, giving her the opportunity to start over. This response from Jesus Christ is a powerful reminder that he came not to condemn, but to save. He didn't say, "It's fine, keep living like this," nor did he crush her with harsh words. Instead, he offered forgiveness and an invitation to true transformation. It's as if he were saying, "Your story doesn't end here. You have a second chance. Use it well." And that same invitation extends to all of us. Who has never made a mistake? Who hasn't needed a second chance? Jesus wasn't just speaking to that adulterous woman. He was speaking to each of us. But this raises an important question. If Jesus didn't come to condemn, then what was the true purpose of the law of Moses? The law of Moses was clear. Sin had to be punished. But there was something many had forgotten. The same law also spoke of mercy. The Pharisees were eager to enforce justice, stones in hand, yet they ignored the fact that God had always made room for repentance. Jesus of Nazareth did not abolish the law. He revealed its true purpose, not just to condemn, but to restore. Think about it. If God were only about justice, no one would escape. But if he were only about mercy, there would be no order or consequences. The balance between these two forces is what makes grace so powerful. The words of Jesus made this clear. He did not deny the woman's sin, nor did he allow it to destroy her. Instead, he offered something greater, redemption. This was very different from what the Pharisees did. They followed the rules, but forgot the heart behind them. And how often do we fall into the same trap? It's easy to demand justice when someone else sins, but beg for mercy when it's our own wrongdoing. Jesus calls us to see beyond judgment and understand the true purpose of the law. And this story teaches us something even deeper. How can we balance justice and mercy in our own lives? How can we apply this teaching of Jesus Christ in our relationships, in our daily lives? After all, if Jesus forgave a woman at the brink of death, what does that teach us about the forgiveness of Jesus? Was not just an act of kindness. It was an invitation to real transformation. He didn't tell the adulterous woman to continue as she was. Instead, he told her, "Go and sin no more." This shows that true forgiveness is not merely a casual "don't worry about it," but rather a chance to start over. Imagine the impact of those words on her life. A woman who expected death found, instead, a new path. How many times do we feel trapped by our mistakes? We think there's no way back, that we've failed too many times. But the words of Jesus show that our past does not have to define our future. The same Jesus who forgave that woman continues to offer new opportunities to anyone who truly repents. His forgiveness doesn't just erase the sin. It opens the door to a new life. Now, think about how this applies to you. Who do you struggle to forgive? Maybe someone has deeply hurt you, or maybe the mistake is your own, and you can't seem to forgive yourself. The teaching of Jesus Christ makes it clear that forgiveness does not mean ignoring wrongdoing. It means allowing transformation to take place. And often, that transformation begins within us. If Jesus of Nazareth, being perfect, chose to forgive, what does that teach us about how we should treat others? Do we carry too many stones, ready to throw them, yet forget to examine ourselves? And more importantly, if forgiveness has such power, how can we apply it in our daily lives to live more freely and truthfully? The story of the adulterous woman is not just about her. It's about all of us. Who hasn't made mistakes? Who hasn't needed a second chance? Jesus of Nazareth teaches us that sin does not define who we are, but the decision to seek God's mercy can change everything. He could have condemned that woman, but he chose to forgive. And if he did it for her, he will do it for anyone who comes to him with a sincere heart. But this story also serves as a warning. It's easy to see the faults in others while ignoring our own. The Pharisees were ready to stone the woman, but when confronted with their own sins, they dropped their stones and walked away. Do we do the same? Are we quick to judge, but slow to acknowledge our own failures? Jesus calls us to look inward first. The good news is that God's forgiveness does not come with the weight of condemnation, but with a call to a new life. When Jesus said, "Go and sin no more," he was showing that the past doesn't have to define the future. A mistake doesn't have to be the end of the road. With God, there is always a new beginning. And that is the message we need to remember every day. Now, take a moment to reflect. How can we live out this message? How can we stop holding onto stones and start offering the same forgiveness we have received? If we truly want to follow the teachings of Jesus Christ, that means not only receiving grace, but also extending it to others. After all, if he has given us a second chance, shouldn't we do the same for those around us? If this story teaches us anything, it's that following the teachings of Jesus Christ goes far beyond simply knowing the word. It requires us to put it into practice. How often do we talk about love and forgiveness, yet at the first opportunity, we hold onto our own stones, ready to judge someone? Jesus showed us that true transformation begins within us. Before pointing out the faults of others, we should ask ourselves, what about me? How is my heart? The forgiveness Jesus gave to the adulterous woman was an invitation to a new life. And the same applies to us. If we are carrying guilt, resentment, or bitterness. It's time to lay them at the feet of Christ. What would happen if today we chose to drop the stones we hold against others and against ourselves? Imagine the peace we could experience if we lived out this truth every single day. Now, think of someone who has hurt you. Forgiveness isn't easy, is it? But remember that Jesus, who was without sin, chose to forgive. A true disciple isn't just someone who talks about Jesus, but someone who acts like him. Forgiving doesn't mean forgetting or pretending the pain never happened. It means choosing not to carry that burden anymore. If Jesus has given us a new beginning, why wouldn't we offer the same to others? And more than that, don't we also need to learn to forgive ourselves? Jesus didn't just save the adulterous woman. He freed her from guilt. If he offers us that same freedom, why do we insist on staying trapped? It's time to embrace grace, leave the past behind, and live with the certainty that in Christ, there is always a new opportunity. But that leads us to one final question. How do we balance justice and grace, just as Jesus did? Jesus of Nazareth showed that true justice is not just about punishment. It's about restoration. He didn't ignore the woman's sin, but he also didn't allow the condemnation of others to be the end of her story. He was the bridge between law and love, between justice and grace. The law said she deserved death, but grace offered her a new beginning. And that is the very heart of the gospel. Think about how often we demand justice when it suits us. When we're the ones who have failed, we cry out for mercy. But when someone else is at fault, we want them to pay for what they've done. Jesus teaches us that justice without grace is cruelty, and grace without justice is permissiveness. The perfect balance is to see people the way he did, with both truth and love. This story challenges us to be like Christ. In a world that thrives on judgment and canceling others, will we be the ones holding stones or the ones reaching out a hand? How many times have we pushed people away from God because we wanted to enforce rules before offering grace? The call of Jesus Christ is clear. Come as you are, but be willing to change. And that transformation starts within us. Throughout this story, we've seen a Jesus who didn't just talk about love and forgiveness. He lived them fully. Now, the final question is, are we willing to follow his example? Because being a disciple of Christ means more than just hearing his words. It means living them. And that can change everything. The story of the adulterous woman teaches us that Jesus did not come to condemn, but to transform lives. He balanced justice and grace in a way that only he could. And if he has offered us forgiveness, why wouldn't we extend that same grace to others and to ourselves? Now, I want to hear from you. What impacted you the most about this story? Drop a comment below. I read every single one. And if this video spoke to your heart, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. That helps us reach even more people with the words of Jesus. And there's more. In the next video, I'm going to reveal another powerful story, one you may have never seen from this perspective. The link is already in the description and in the card above. Go check it out and continue this incredible journey of learning.